Okay, Q&A.
Joining us now is Johnny von Wallstrom, the director of the Pearl of Africa.
So, this is the week that we're releasing The Confused African. Tomorrow, actually. It's a web series that, if you haven't checked out the trailer, you can find the trailer on the YouTube channel. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be 8 weeks. Each week is gonna be one episode. So it's a documentary. It's about an hour in total. And each week we do 2 episodes that is like a behind the scenes type of like breakdown of how we made the series. So it's everything from like the story to distribution and all that, like grading, editing, marketing, distribution, all that stuff. So it's a good thing to kind of follow along if you want to see how we release like a web type of series in a way that we think is how we want to release stuff in the future. It's not it's a film that might be sold later to TV and all that, but we wanted to try just to have it first as a web only project. So we'll see how that goes. I think it's gonna be an interesting thing to see how well it does without film festivals. That's what I'm looking most forward to, because when we did the Pearl of Africa as a web series, it generated so much attention that the film festival circuit that we went on later, it didn't come to the same type of exposure and all that. So I think that we can do much better if we focus on online first and then do the rest. Anyway, questions. I got one here, which I thought was just interesting. From your videos, it seems like you live in a slightly remote area. I always thought you had to live in the middle of the action to be a filmmaker. So in your experience, how does where you live affect your work? Thanks. Fanyan Ranyan. I think that when you start out, it's an advantage to be part of a big city like Stockholm, where I live, but I live like an hour outside, or maybe even more if you're on the south side of Stockholm. So in that sense, I don't think I could do what I do today if I would have started outside of the city and then tried to do this. It would never have worked. So you kind of need to have your foot in the city. But being in the city, I've been in the city for 10 years and then I move out. That's pretty easy, I think, if you want to work in a different way. But you have to kind of establish your network and all that and your career first to be able to move out and have that running pretty much. That's at least how I feel. It's a really it's a problematic thing if you're starting out and you don't have a network and you try to get work, and people that are, for instance, in the advertising agencies, they work with people that are close to them. So even for me, it's a problem that I live outside and sometimes they might forget about you. And then once you see them, you always get work from them. So it's also a matter of like networking and meeting people constantly and trying to catch up, like take lunches and all those things. I usually try to go have lunch with people while I'm in the city. But for my career as of now, trying to shift over to more YouTube and more films like The Confused African that's coming out tomorrow, then it's going to be probably a shift in itself, because we want to work with brands on series on our YouTube channels, but I think that will take time. We have a series now that is a little bit of a secret that might it might be something that could work together with a brand, because it's a big community behind the whole story. So that might be easier for them to understand how they can tap into a community of people through the story, instead of being like, we have this project which Confused African, it's a strong story and all, but it doesn't have this strong following, or doesn't have a famous person that you're making it around. So it's kind of hard to get brands on board if you have a story like that. That's at least what I think. And then if you are outside, I think the advantage if you never move to a big city, for instance, the big advantage is that you have, hopefully, you have to build a community of people around you in that city. That's been done in many places. I mean, South by, for instance, is something that's come out of the creative people that moved there, and there's like this whole, movement behind everything in that place because you have creatives moving in, and then, it flourishes. But that's something different. I think that can be, it can be kind of hard to do that in Sweden. I don't feel like Sweden has, if we look at YouTube, Sweden doesn't have pretty much anyone that we can collaborate with. That's the difficult part in Sweden. Because we are, if we talk to brands, we are associated with, for instance, Jon Olsson, which is a really big YouTuber. And that's kind of difficult to kind of be mentioned in the same type of conversation and then have like 10% of his followers, or maybe even less. And then that's, the one that is above, and then there's nothing outside of that. So it's kind of hard then to find a community to collaborate with. While if we look abroad, we can always meet people. So that's the difficult part, I think, but YouTube makes it easy to network. So it depends on what you want to do. It's hard if you want to do advertising to be outside of the city. It's not hard if you want to do your films. Then it can make you focus more. Yeah. Okay, so how do you research internet interview? Jan Burkhard. Sorry, maybe crushed that name. It's a little bit different depending on where you are. If it's a subject that you know a lot about, then you kind of know where to start looking. If it's something that you don't know anything about, you need to start talking to people and reading news about the subjects. Usually I like reading articles about something. Maybe I find an idea like mining in South Africa. Then I start to look at that, like, okay, so articles that's been written, you dig deeper and deeper and try to find different fragments that you pick up on, and then you move on with those, try to find more information, and do like, you Google images of the thing, you see stuff, you get a feel for the situations that might occur in that world, and that's usually how I go about it. I read a lot of news and then I do some deeper research when I have kind of a clue of what I'm looking for. But I don't go out and read a book about a topic, for instance. I think that's, maybe it can be good, but I think it's a waste of time because it takes so much time to read that book compared to Googling around and searching for different fragments and piecing something together. At least for me, it's ineffective. But right now, for instance, I've got this story in my head that could be like, okay, this might be something that could be pitched as a TV series. And then this just started this weekend. And I just got onto this YouTube channel and I found this guy that is like, oh man, he's amazing. And then I just bought his book, started reading his book, looked at a lot of his YouTube videos, and I was just like, oh, this is so good. And then I started just looking at the videos to try to find out more about like him and his story and all that. And that can take hours and hours and hours. I'll probably watch like 4, 5, 6 hours of him this weekend just because I was just interested in the thing. So it can vary, but usually that's how I do it. I just go a little bit on like intuition and then combining that with trying to structure stuff once I have enough information that I can structure it. And then, yeah, the interviews part of it, like we do interviews with the people that we cast. We do interviews. I rarely do them. We usually have somebody else who does them. Either Andre or Andre finds somebody local to do it. And that's just because I want it to be fresh on my end. When I come and I meet them, I want to go on intuition and feel the situation, just because I don't want to be biased in any way. But I do write like questions for him to try to research. That's usually how we do it, but those questions are usually I talked a little bit about it last week, I think, where I went through a couple of questions that I had sent for an interview that we did with a person that we're trying to cast on feature film. And for that, it kind of is about more finding the story behind the story, like the personal story, than it is about, oh, so what do you feel about this issue that you're making the film about? It's much more about finding a story behind all that, to me at least. Okay. Would you recommend the younger generation to enter freelance documenting? Why or why not? I'm guessing freelance documenting your own life like we're doing, or I'm guessing that's it. I definitely recommend that whole like Gary Vee document versus create mentality. I think that in like our way of doing it, I document like tons of stuff that I do, and I think that whole thing of documenting everything you do while you go about your life and then finding somewhere to put it, that's a good mentality to have. I don't think that maybe his way of working would work for us, Gary Vaynerchuk that is, because I think that he is not at all interested in being, you know, a great filmmaker. He just wanna be like an inspiring person talking about stuff and getting people to do stuff. And then like how he does it doesn't matter as much. But if you want to be a cinematic storyteller, then it matters how it's being told and how it's being shot and all those things. So then you need to kind of have a little bit more deliberate choices in that. For me, that's like, okay, so I've lit this whole studio, put lights up so that I can move around freely without stopping and having to do stuff. I always try like different mic setups, which works best, which doesn't need all these sound blankets that I have right now. And I've found that like a lav, a wired lav like I had now, this one, that works the best, for instance, to get away the whole spaciousness in the studio. So when I use this one, I can get away with much more. Otherwise, I have to do like de-reverberation and stuff in post, which I don't like to do, but otherwise it's just like a big hall. So try to adapt your like life and your situation where you're at so that you can document it. If you are a freelance filmmaker, you should like document stuff that is the style that you want to make. Don't make something just to document your life and become a famous person. I think that's probably not as effective. Yeah, hope that answers the question. What equipment do you recommend if you want to record sound from distance? I have one audio input and I know you hate wireless lavaliers. Yeah, this is the thing. There's just one rule to recording audio. Get close to the subject, like about half a meter. This is how far away you should be from the subject. You shouldn't record from further than that. And with that rule, a lot of people don't have a choice and have to have lavs. And lavs are really good if you can't control the environment. For instance, as I was saying about this spacious room, lavs compresses the room because it's so close to you. And it's also made so that it takes out certain frequencies to compensate for the muffling sound that you get from having it below, you know, your cheek and all that. But I think certain situations you can't do that. So you have to have either a wireless lav or you need like the recorder I have, the Electrosonics recorder, but there's from Tascam, there's the same type, which is like a portable, like this big recorder, like it's super tiny. It's like a wireless lav thing, but smaller, but it's recording straight to a memory card. And that I like more because you don't get the interruptions or interference, because the whole sound wave or the sound network, whatever you say, the air, is full of signals. It's so crowded that, I mean, the wireless, it always has issues because it's so crowded. So that's why I try to stay away from it, because sometimes it works really well and other times you cannot get it to work at all. And what do you do then? And even if that's like 10%, those 10% is crucial if you want to deliver stuff to clients and that sort of thing. So for me, it doesn't work. For others, maybe it does. But I just think that if I can choose, I wire it to the camera. For instance, right now, this lav is wired. It's XLR, so XLR wired into the XLR input of the camera. And that's just because I want to avoid syncing as much as I can. That just is like, I don't need syncing just for the fun of it. But I have also recorded a lot to like a small recorder, Tascam DR60D, I think that one was called, which I just had on my waist, and then I had wireless lavs connected to that, and then I had like a shotgun mic on the camera, and that's also a good solution. But in general, you have to get close to the subjects, and for me, I like to be free from cables as a DOP, so as much as I can move around, I want to be able to, even if I know that if I have a mic on the camera, for instance, and I have headphones on and I notice that the lavs die for some reason because I'm wireless, for instance, then I know that I have to move close. I have to be, closer than this camera is. This camera is maybe like 1.5 meters or something from me. I have to get into for it to be good, crisp audio. So then you have to use that type of lenses that get you that close as well. So there's a lot of things that you need to think about that isn't all about like what gear, what mic or what lav do you use. It's also about how do you move to get that audio possible. Like maybe you can have a mic on your camera if you always limit yourself so you're always close to the person. And otherwise, when you aren't, you need to have lavs because then you know that you can move away. And I used wireless lavs for a long time in that sense, that I had those when I was far away. I always picked them up. But for instance, in a scene in the Pearl of Africa, if you've seen it, it's a scene on the mountain with the protagonist Cleo and Nelson, who are just up on a mountain, and like it's a really beautiful type of scene and emotional and all that. And what happened was that one of the lavs just got disturbance, so none is pretty much usable. I think I could get like 1 or 2 words out of the whole like 2 hours recording on one of the lavs. And what you need to do then is kind of get the people to be close to each other so that you record a lav on one of the people, and then you have to do a compressor in post to get that audio up. But as soon as they get a little bit too far away from each other, you're not going to get anything. So yeah, it's complex. I will do videos on audio later. Okay. 13 Erman, I like your videos. You deserve more subs. Best from Turkey. Turkey was there just very recently. Yeah, I should have more subs. Greetings from Miami. Hey, Miami. Can you explain your live sound and camera software setup? Keep up the good work. Yeah, I can. So it's changing a little bit because I use these Q&As also to do other videos now. Before, when it was just Q&A, I didn't care so much about putting up sound blankets and stuff because it takes like 15 or 20 extra minutes to set up. But now I have these sound blankets from Matthews, I think. So I have some above, and then I have some on the side, and then behind that I have like thick molten fabrics, like black thick molten fabrics, so that kind of compresses the audio here in that space. And then for like the technical stuff of how I record, Sanken COS wired lav XLR that goes straight into the C300. And then before I had a directional mic, but I just felt like it was too picked up too much of the room ambience. And then like for lighting, there's a Aperture 120D right there with like a big softbox on it. There's a like hardware store LED right there. That light you can see. There's like a up there, there's like a light that is getting some cyan light right there. to just like pick up that practical light. That's an LED light that I can change the color of. And then, I mean, that's just a eBay LED, like a tube, this wide. Yeah, and then what's that one called? It's like a small is it 30 or 50? It's an LED that is just getting some light right there. And then up there's a light in the ceiling, but that's just like getting the ambience up a tiny bit. That's a Traver LED panel, like so. And then I use an encoder from Teradek 501, I think it's called. And then all that's just like broadcasted over 4G. So that's been like the biggest issues to like get the antennas up, because now I have like 2 antennas. If you watch my B-roll episode, the first one, you can see how big the antennas are. They're like this big, and they're mounted up now on the wall. So that was a big thing to get up, to get like a stable connection. But even though I got them up, I think last week either there was a snowstorm, so either the snowstorm made the connection really bad, or it was because I had like the new Google Drive file stream thing was activated. So any of them, I don't know, destroyed it. So yeah, that's basically what it was. I think that's it. Sound blanket, yeah. And then the C300 with the Sigma 18 to 35, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's it. When you present your project to a producer When you present your project to a producer, do you do it straight away, send a synopsis? Like, this is such a networking game. A producer will probably not want to work with you if you don't know the person. That's a difficult thing. Like, it's the same always. All the producers that are established, they often have already, like, they have people that they work with, so they are pretty much full in terms of like the next year or so with stuff. And that's the kind of difficult thing, to kind of get into their loop if you don't know them, because they are working with people already and it's working for them and they're making their money and they're surviving. So like, taking a new person on, it's much more difficult than people think at first. It takes a lot of time, and it's always a gamble to invest all that time. So the best way, I think, is to get to know the people first before you try to approach them to produce stuff, because then like, people will probably be more open to reading what you have, or at least like looking at it. But in my case, I send whatever to Andre because I already work with him, so I can send like an ID, or I can just call him and tell him about the ID, or fragmented thing that isn't yet an ID. So for that, I don't send a synopsis. I think I wrote a synopsis around the same time as we sent the writing a script video up. About the same time, I think we wrote it. Now we've been like deep into applications, so that's when we have it. Before that, we don't have so much of like a structured ID. It actually takes a lot of time. We've shot for, I think, 3 weeks, and then like edit the trailer, doing a lot of stuff before we even sit and write the synopsis. I've written on my own end and all that, like writing just to kind of develop the project, but we haven't talked about something solid. It's just still floating around. So then it's just like an idea, so we can just as well talk about it as, writing it down. I think I like more about the whole aspect of developing. I like more talking about it to get, you know, it moving and to be a creative process than to write stuff down. Any tips for working in Adobe Audition? Not specifically, but I guess it's like third, fourth, maybe fourth tutorial episode that we're gonna do on Confused African is gonna be on the sound mixing of that. So look at that one, because that takes up like how we planned and structured the sound mixing. So that is probably something that you can apply to Audition as well. It's pretty similar. It's just different ways of doing it. I skipped work. I feel guilty and good. Yeah, that's the way you should feel. You often talk about the Pearl of Africa, yet I couldn't find it anywhere. The order link on the website says it's not available. Yeah, it's on Netflix. But Netflix is, yeah, they're special. They don't let you know exactly where it's going to be, like in what countries. It's supposed to be in Sweden, it's not in Sweden. So we don't know. We just know from people who tell us it's not available, it's available. But in the US and a lot of the big countries, you can get it. Smaller countries, maybe it's too much of a hassle to translate, I don't know. Yeah, that's on their end. Exactly, get a trial for Netflix. Yeah, left coast. That's the good thing about like being an hour away from the city. If you're that far away, I feel I lived like a half an hour outside of like the city central before, and that was a little bit too close, because then you can still like it's not a hassle to get in to do stuff. So you always kind of do stuff that you shouldn't do because you should focus on what you really want to do in life instead of going and drinking beers. I can drink beer here too. I make them. But on, you know, the flip side, as long as you're in the city, you get a lot of attention from like freelance work and all those things. A lot more comes your way when you're in the city because you meet more people, because you are more like in the whole vibe of the city. When you move out, and this was deliberate on my part, you distance yourself from that. You will get less, you know, offers, but you will get time to focus on what you believe in and focus on your career and develop your career. Because I had at least trouble saying no to things. I still have a little bit of that issue, but I also can say no if I really don't want to do stuff. But when I was in the city, I said yes to too many things, and I did everything that I shouldn't do. And like the projects that I made, the films took so much longer than they should have taken just because of that whole thing. So I think that's the good part about being outside. If you're just an hour outside, you can go in for, you know, even a lunch meeting and go back easily. But you won't do like the random stuff that takes time and just like go meet somebody for like half an hour, but in total it's like 3 hours or something, or your whole like work mode is destroyed that day. Focus, that's what I get from living an hour outside. Hey man, how's life? How about me doing an internship at yours? Spice up my general doc game. Where do I apply? You apply, where are you at? First of all, you apply at Andre, A-N-D-R-E, at roughstudios.com. He loves emails. He's gonna hate me for this, but still, that's where you apply. I think that it depends on where you're at, because it depends on what we do. Right now, we've been so focused on like this whole web series, so we haven't done much advertising at all this year. I don't think we've done anything since the end of last year. We had some stuff that was like laying over, so we did some when we got back from Christmas and all. But then that kind of comes and goes. We're probably going to do more of that now, but it's been like a whole focus on getting that done, and then we're focused on getting 2 courses done, which we're going to release in I guess, a month or so, something like that. So that's been taking all the time now, and then it's not, you know, very easy to do internships. But when we do the other stuff, it's easier. And we've also been like busy with the whole application stuff. We're waiting to know if we get development funding or not now. So, but send it in, and then we take it from there. What types of education material do you see yourself having freedom to make when you've made the shift to majority of online efforts being online and YouTube? I think that the great thing that I've seen, like in terms of being a creator, is that it kind of goes hand in hand. The way we've built this whole like YouTube channel is around us making films. It's not about us talking about how to make films. It's much more so about like us making films, then taking you along on that journey. And that's what I think is the biggest like differentiator from other people that do the same type of tutorial stuff that is you know, more generic and not specific on projects. And I think as a filmmaker, that's the upside with YouTube. You can actually like do your projects. Like we're planning so much now that is really focused around like building a 360 idea of how we launch a project. So if we, for instance, take Confused African as an example, that's like a little bit more developed than the Pearl of Africa was. But there we do, okay, so first we do the whole story, which is just an hour of like a documentary. That's divided up in like 8 episodes. And then on top of that, we have, I guess it's 2 times 8, so 16 episodes, that's tutorials. And all of those is based around like, okay, so story, editing, all those things that is part of the process of making a film. And then on top of that, we've done 2 courses. One of them is based around the Pearl of Africa, so that's not around this. That's more about like how to sell your film to Netflix or other VOD services. What do you need to do? Like how do you develop a project like that? So that's not connected to this, but we also did a grading course that is very connected to the Confused African. And that's just because like, okay, we got this perfect case study that's current, and then we just hooked that course onto it. So if you want to learn more deeply about grading, we do like 2 episodes about grading, how we graded Confused African on YouTube. But then if you want to learn more, then you have that course that you can take. That's, I don't know, it's not edited yet, but it's probably going to be like a couple of hours. So that's how we see it in the future as well, but much more refined and much more developed in terms of like, okay, so our whole channel, ideally it should always be like the educational content can fund us going around and doing content that then generates the educational content, if you get that whole concept. So if we go around and we do a documentary, for instance, as we're doing now, we're doing a feature film, we're doing all the development, it takes a lot of time and like, say take 2 or 3 years to make. During that time we shoot everything, like all the moments of making it. This is kind of where the vlog started in the beginning, but now it's much more refined, so it's much more breaking out like all the different steps. Maybe I can just go through how we're like looking at the names, for instance, of the episode for that web series. So like the first episode, all this is written already, so it's not that far away that we're gonna start doing it. But the first episode is like killing off your previous baby. Like how do you leave your past project and move on to the next and make sure that that one just doesn't die off and nothing, you know, comes to it afterwards. But all this is done in a cinematic way, so we see this as like a documentary series in itself. And it shouldn't be like a behind the scenes type of series. That's just, you know, it should be more cinematic and more of a normal documentary, but it's done, you know, about something that is educational. And then on top of that, we probably add like tutorial based stuff that is more deeper into certain things, and that is more like this, talking or yeah, mix. You've seen the tutorials probably, so those types. And then like the next episode is maybe like ID generation, then the next one background, and then like the next one trying out your concept. And all this is like we document everything we do while we do it, the whole process of making our next film. And then we piece that together. We make a web series out of it that's documentary, and then on top of that we add tutorial-based content, and then on top of that we add courses, and like for instance with the Confused African we're gonna release also LUTs and power grades that you can buy. So it's gonna be like a whole ecosystem, and our concept for it is that all this hopefully can fund us going around and doing those documentaries, so we don't have to kind of apply for funding or sell it anywhere, that we can screen instead of having, for instance, the Pearl of Africa on Netflix, we can just screen it here. That's the hope. I don't know if it's gonna work. It depends on if you buy anything, but that's at least I think the future, or the potential future for like independent filmmakers. I think it's much more of a viable career move than trying to get your film funded, because you never know. Like even if we apply to people that were established in Sweden, so if we apply, we think that we should get funded, but there is no guarantee. And that whole situation is just like, it's too stressful. So this is much better for us, but we'll see if it works out. Hopefully it works out. What do you think, Left Coast? What's your, because I know you also are thinking about the same type of ideas. Yeah. Next question. So cool channel. Could you tell me a little bit more about how you work with your subjects while shooting a doc? You're directing. Do you direct or do you step out of the situation? Yeah, usually, since I've shot everything myself before, and then I started directing, I've kind of developed a way of shooting that's pretty natural to me, just hanging out with my characters. So whatever it is that I do, whatever the story is, the situations become pretty much the same. I direct only when I have to. If, for instance, they're so strong and perfectly casted characters that everything happens by itself, which it should in an ideal world. That's why I spend so much time finding like the right characters beforehand. If you get that, then you almost don't have to direct anything. You just have to kind of put them in situations and things will happen. Or just turn the camera on and follow them and select when you turn the camera on. And that's like the way that my direction is. I try to see like, okay, this situation is missing to tell this story. Let's put him or her in that situation, and then I just follow. And then maybe I poke them in some directions. So an example could be when I was shooting the Pearl of Africa, Cleo and Nelson was focused around, you know, sitting home at home, being with their laptop, and that's maybe not the most cinematic thing you can see in life. So then you need to kind of start thinking about like, how do you make their story more cinematic, and how do you tell the story with more of a scenic type of language than just being, you know, in a room. There's a lot of films that's just in a room, but I'm pretty sure that most films that are in a room, they would have been better if it was a mixture of different things and more using the whole cinematic language. And using like that whole changing of locations, that's also been something that I've learned through doing so much reality TV that was more of the documentary stylish type of reality. So everything was supposed to look like it could be in the cinema, and there were sliders and all those things, but then the whole situation was that you don't have any time to do it good, but you always know that, okay, so we just need a little fragment from this location, then switch location. It's a lot like shooting music videos. You need a lot of locations in order for it to feel like an epic thing. So that's how we went about it, and I do the same thing with with my films. I try to change the scenes as much as I can, to have different locations and different situations, and then I try to have characters that are so well developed, or like they work as they are, so that you can put them in any situation and that story will come out. So a lot of the stuff that is directing goes into casting. That's the most crucial part of my directing, because then it's just like when you get them in the situations, for instance when Cleo and Nelson, I felt like, okay, this is too boring, we can't sit here a whole film just by the computer and not talking. So let's just go out. Can we go up on this hill, right across the road? And they have never been there. And what happens when you put people in those situations, this was a love story. So you know that, okay, they go by themselves. I just keep quiet and I follow what happens. I didn't direct anything more than just start them in that situation, get them to walk up there, and then just be quiet and see what happens. So they're going up the first time. This is the first time walking up this hill. There's like this beautiful sunset and all that. And they have to fight to get up. Cleo is kind of pissed because it's, it's a bit of a struggle to get up over that hill, to get up on that top. And that whole thing creates the dynamic that she's complaining, but she's like playing with it and happy. Everything they see when it's beautiful and all that, that whole thing is genuine because she's doing it for the first time. If they had been there before, they probably wouldn't have been the same way. But you need to see the film to understand what I'm talking about. But like, I try to put people in situations that can tell the story. So I try to think of like what situation could tell this, what could show their love in this case. Them going up there and then them, being touched by that moment of looking out over the view, and then them being together. They will probably start kissing. They will probably start hugging. That sort of thing you try to foresee. And that's how I direct, rather than like tell them to hug or kiss. Yeah. Okay. You're talking a lot about networking. How did you build one? Film club, met in cinema. I think I just built it like pretty organic because I worked in different places. I think the best way is try different things. Try to see, like, work with people that are doing the same stuff that you do, that are liking the same stuff that you do. I worked with, for instance, TV shows that was all of the people that work there have pretty much gone on to do like bigger things, like the whole crew part of it, and then those people, they become a connection, they become a network, and then you move on and you get introduced to other people. But I've been doing this for over like 10 years, so yeah, I've gotten that organically without trying to get it. I've been pretty bad at networking, but I mean, I'm a social person, but I don't network that much. But I don't have to anymore, like to get jobs in Stockholm. That's more of Andre's part, is to build his network, because he's the producer, so he goes around and pitches. And then I'm the one that has to take the presentations more, like, because when you're a creative, you have to pretty much pitch it to the clients and all that, and you have to go to the meetings with the creatives at an agency and kind of bounce ideas and that sort of thing. So there's different roles. But then for festivals, it's much more important to like be very, very active. Try to, like, when we did Zero Silence, we stalked so many people at the festivals, and we just like looked at the list of the delegates that was there, took their image, and then went and tried to find it. And then, that's not the best way of doing it, because you shouldn't force and pitch at festivals pretty much. That's the ironic thing. You should pretty much just try to be friends. So I just think it's about going to the events where people are. You probably need to go and make advertising stuff if that's the people that you want to network with. The best way for me is to network while I work with people. Like, I always think that's the strongest bonds that I have to people is because I've worked with them. You travel with them, you sit in an editing room with them, those types of things. Yeah. I enjoy watching the process of documentary filmmaking. What was the very first project you did, and what's the most important lesson you learned after having gone through the process? I mean, I've done a lot of films before, but I think the first real short that I did that was like more serious, you know, we had a budget, we had like production, sponsorship, or product sponsorships, or product placement rather. And we had like equipment, we got a lot of people, famous actors and actresses up to the north of Sweden to live in a house that we rented for like 3 weeks, I think. That whole process was probably, that was my first film school, that was like a real film school, doing that production. And yeah, it was chaotic, and good thing was that we had a sauna in the basement of the house. So we rented this house that everybody lived in. I think we shared rooms. I don't really remember. It was a long time ago. But the best thing for the whole team, because it was crazy. The whole shooting and schedule and like driving 3 hours. Sweden is really big, and especially up there, you have to drive really far. And we had this epic idea of this Alfa Romeo Spider driving through landscapes in the north of Sweden, and we had to drive like 3 hours, or like 3 hours to the places each day, and then you know, do the shoot, go back and forth. It was hell, but amazing for me because I like that type of stuff. But for the team, you can see how they slowly break apart, especially the less experienced you are. So for instance, if you have worked on music videos, you're set. You can handle any situation. That stress level and that whole like mitigating conflict and all that, then you're set. It's the best way to learn how to make films efficiently, I think. I don't like music videos for anything else than that. But then that whole experience, it kind of taught me how to, you know, run a team and fund a film and all those things. And later we went to Cannes with it. So there we went and tried to sell also the film as a feature film. We went to all these pitches, and it was like this big thing that didn't work out. And then I moved on to making docs. But my first doc was Zero Silence, and I hadn't made a doc before that, I think. Let's see, Left Coast. I definitely agree with creating your own system. Yeah, totally agree. Do you think the personality of a creator in his social or public life affect his content? If so, until what extent? Yeah, I think so. I think that I think that all the choices you make as a creator, they come down to like what type of person you are, what type of stuff you like. I have friends that I like really like as friends, but we couldn't work on the same thing because we have so different like concepts of how a good film is made. It just would never work out. We have so different tastes, and in that sense, I think that like it comes down to both personality, but it comes down to like how you see film, especially, and how you see a good film. And it also comes down to experience, of course. But I think that's the biggest thing. When you see personalities, you can kind of see what they're into. And like everybody won't like the stuff that I make because to some people it's going to be really boring. And to others it's going to be like the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. And that's just the way it is. It's always going to be like that. And I think you can see those things. Like some people will think that it's too sentimental, the stuff that I make, while others will think it's perfect and it touched them so much that they started to cry. It's such a hard it's hard to know what frequency people is on, and especially on YouTube when you have so much people like just complaining. They are the loudest, so you often hear them. But then you can see like you can see certain videos, they work really well, even though you got a lot of hate. So that's part of it. And to get like a viral video, you need, for instance, that hate. So that's just a side note of that. But I think that the public part of it has always been there. Like if you look at, I'm so fascinated, for instance, in what Will Smith does right now. He's making himself like super relevant when he's not really. But by doing his vlog and by doing his whole like Facebook videos where he's just like being pretty much a life coach. I saw a video from him today about love and how he and Jada was, talking about love and all that, which was pretty amazing. And I think people that do that, and this has always been like that. If you look at Kardashians, that's the same thing. Like they always win because they build stronger bonds with people. And if you look at building a brand, for instance, like a Snoop Dogg or like a Lil Yachty or whoever it is, those people have a character that's so, like it's so ingrained in people that like them or hate them, doesn't really matter. Their personality goes through. You know exactly how to imitate. For instance, I think that whole concept of like, if you know the person and know their image and all that, and you remember them, then that's going to have a good impact on your career. You're still going to have to deliver on what you do, like what works you put out there. You're not going to, have an image and succeed if you don't have the work to back it up. But everybody that has an image and has a personal life out there is going to build stronger bonds with their fans. And you can see that also when you're touring with artists, because I've been a lot with artists at different venues and all those things, filming them. And when you see fans come close to them and get to meet them in real life, you see that connection and that bond totally come together. There was this Swedish artist that I was touring with for like a year, and he was, he got families to meet with him every time he got to these cities. So their whole family came out. I mean, one of them probably started being his fan, but then everybody they come out and they hang out and they have a drink afterwards or something like that. And that whole bond is what I think social is creating, but on a global scale. And that's what's fascinating to me, at least. And if you're not, like I wasn't a natural in front of the camera, not at all. I did a series that was pretty funny because this is, like I wouldn't say it's the same type of stuff that Jake Paul and those guys do, but kind of similar. And this was like, but in Swedish. But probably, maybe this was like 5-6 years ago. So we started this YouTube channel and did this. It was called Dumbest, but in Sweden, Dummast. And we did these videos with two of my friends, which are really dumb, but I like them, but that's what their dynamics was really fun. And I was kind of the behind the scenes photographer. This was like a spin-off of The Office. So I was filming, like I was a character, but you couldn't see me. You could just hear me talk sometimes. So I was a character within the whole story and all that. We did that for a while. It didn't take off, nothing happened. And it's just interesting to see how that thing was pretty much what I do today, but now I'm actually comfortable of being front of the camera and all that because I've done it so much. And it just took probably, I guess, like 8 months or something to kind of get used to it. And when you shoot yourself, it's easier because you're more comfortable with yourself. You can decide pretty much on what goes out and what doesn't. If somebody else is doing it like it is in reality TV, even though that they go viral and like everybody all of a sudden knows about them and they got a career, like that is a brand that is useful. But I think it's more useful when you actually can control that and put out what you want to happen off of it, So if I put out, for instance, that I am a internationally acclaimed film director, that's the stuff that people will know. And if you can control that, and if you can build an image and a relationships to your audience, then that's amazing. That's what you want, and that's what gets people to go to screenings and, you know, concerts and all those things. Okay, so last question. How would you describe your filmmaking career in 8 sentences? Oh, that's kind of hard. Blank. Struggle in 8 sentences. 8 sentences, that's like a whole synopsis. You get a couple of words. I guess for me, like, the whole thing has been like a struggle, and also you have just gotten to kind of understand yourself that nobody else is going to do anything for you, or nobody's going to make things happen for you. You're the only one that can make, you know, your projects happen, and you have to kind of get your shit together in order for that to happen. That's been like the biggest thing for me. And then just like go out and put stuff out all the time, because then stuff happens. Yeah. Okay, let me get one more. That was so short. Let's say I have a YouTube channel with around 100 subscribers. However, I have 10 high quality videos. Say your videos are 10 out of 10, mine are 6 out of 10. What are my chances to get a commercial work, and how to get it? I think the most important thing is that you make, instead of thinking like you have YouTube subscribers, you have that, you should make just one project that is something that you're really proud of, and that is a short film or something like that, then that you can put out. And it could be like Vimeo staff picks, or it could be just you putting it out on YouTube, or it could be Facebook, whatever. But I think it's much better to do it maybe the festival route, to get it hyped, and then to release it online. Because when you do that whole, you get the laurels and all those things, people kind of take it more serious, even though it's just like it's just graphics. But people do take it more serious. Yeah, I think you just need to do a passion project, which is exactly what you want to make. Like, what do you want to get hired for? Exactly what style, exactly how is it? Do that, and you will be able to use that to get work. Okay, one more. 2 minutes. I'm quick. This is like a lightning round. What advice do you have for filmmakers trying to get a regular YouTube schedule for films and videos? Yeah, that's the hardest part. We had to do this for like 2 years before understanding how we would do it. I think you just need to start making, first of all, you need to stick to one schedule. We stick to once a week, and it probably took us like a year or a year and a half until we got that, you know, down. And then after that, we kind of knew and reassessed what do we need to do to get up to 5. And that's just because we knew that if we can get up to 5 videos, we know that the YouTube algorithm will kind of like us more and will promote us more, and we will grow faster. So we also had, like, connected to this whole courses concept that we had, we just felt, because our idea was to put out the course earlier, like last year even, the Netflix course that we've been making. But then we were just like, no, it's more important that we get up to 5. And when we have that, then, you know, we can focus on that. So we kind of postponed that just because we knew that, like, to us, it makes more sense to focus on building the channel. That's everything, basically. If you want to move away from other stuff. So if we want to, for instance, crowdfund our next film, which we're thinking of, then the channel is really important in order to make that happen. So we need to kind of reassess, like, what do you need it for? Why do you want a YouTube channel that is big? And all those things. And we know exactly why we want to get up to like 100 or 150K subs, because that's when brands start to really want to collaborate with you. And it has nothing to do with like, oh, 150K, yay. Nothing about that. It's just that that's a platform for us to do more things of the stuff that we want to do, documentary films. And when you get up to like 1 million or something like that, then you can really start to like do stuff with brands and do stuff that is outside of Netflix and all those, and or both. Yeah, okay. Thank you for this week. Tomorrow, Confused African, first episode. Do not miss. Okay, see ya, bye.